Dear Vice Chancellor, University of Engineering and Technology, Lahore, dear Dr. Noor Mohammad Khan Saab, the Director of Center of Excellence for Water Resources Engineering, dear participants of the second International Conference on Hydrology and Water Resources, and of course, the great organizers of this very important forum, I congratulate all of you for this very important and very timely meeting. I have prepared some slides which will hopefully be able to link with the 9th World Water Forum, which has happened recently, in fact, last week. And then I would like to link with some of the ideas related to integrated management for hydrology and the water resources. Hydrology is the knowledge which is needed to manage the water resources in the best possible way. Let me share some slides with you. And these slides are also available if anybody would like to have a copy of them. So the title of my presentation is about integrated water resources management. What are the paradigms and ecological civilization for shared water future? Something which we are doing in China, which can add value to this very important international conference on hydrology and water resources. I look forward also to receiving the presentations from your meeting, which can be useful. The presentation will be available as a PDF if anybody would like to have a copy of them. Very importantly, the biggest event in the world of water, the 9th World Water Forum, happened in Senegal last week. And there has been a very important blue deal which has been discussed there. There's a Dakar Statement for water security and sanitation for peace and sustainable development. Very important for Pakistan and for the players around the world. And of course, World Water Council has been promoting the ideas related to water security and sanitation. The full declaration is available online. I encourage all participants to have a look on what has been discussed there. The 2022 Dakar Declaration is at a very important point when there are only 8 years left before achieving all the SDGs, and especially Sustainable Development Goal number 6, which is about water and sanitation, water security and sanitation for all. So the Dakar Declaration calls upon international community to guarantee the right to water and sanitation for all. So that's really very important for this conference. We need better knowledge of hydrology, and we need to manage our water resources better. How do we also make sure the availability of resources and resilience of the resources from shocks like floods and droughts? And it also calls upon adequate funding, and it calls upon inclusive water governance like integrated water resources management and to enhance cooperation, which is also the purpose of having your very important meeting. And this can bring cooperation within Pakistan and with other countries. So it's a very important declaration which calls upon the implementation of human right to drinking water and sanitation through appropriate legislative frameworks. So there is a legislative international law framework through the UN General Assembly. It needs to translate into the national laws, provincial laws, local government laws to mobilize all actors through integrated and inclusive strategies. And it also calls upon the effective implementation of international humanitarian law, in particular the additional protocols to the Geneva Conventions of 1949. And basically, it's about protection of water and sanitation systems, and also in the times of conflict. So transboundary water is very critical during these times, which is also important, of course, for Pakistan with its rivers shared with India. And especially now, the new geopolitical challenges which we are facing, the importance of water and more international cooperation is important in all respects. And the work related to hydrological cycle and water values is very, very important. So I would also ask you to consider thinking about attitudes, beliefs, and values which are linked with our religion, literature, and art, as well as looking into the management of hydrological cycle and the institutions, the norms, the customs, and laws, our political systems we are working with, and ethics and behavior of water management. Like ethics and behavior of water management in the upper watershed, the areas we call as Barani areas in Pakistan, versus ethics and behaviors of water management along the canal systems, the provision of environmental flows, and making sure upstream and downstream users enjoy water management in the best possible way. Also very important for us is to think about the material values of water, the built and the natural water infrastructure, the built infrastructure like the dams, the barrages, the canals, but also natural water infrastructure in terms of the watershed itself and its management, the vegetation, and the link of the hydrological cycle, both from the hydrological extremes as well as from the management of water as a resource. So this is broadly where the world is moving. And there is a lot of work in China, which I would like to highlight today in this presentation. And I will be very happy to link with all of you if you are interested to know more. So climate change basically is also a carrier of values. It links Anthropocene with humans as separate from nature. Humans can and should control nature. We can create an artificial ecosystem for ourselves. These are the kind of the modern beliefs. We're not bound by the laws of nature, but these modern beliefs basically are the beliefs which are causing havoc to our planet. And we need to carefully look into how can we have sustainable use of resources. Water and humans cannot be separated. We cannot control our rivers and lakes fully. There is no superstructure which can provide for all the floods, and there is no reservoir in the world which can help provide water during all times. We have to understand the laws of nature, and we need to abide by them. And we need to carefully understand how climate is changing the water availability in different parts of our watershed, as well as along the rivers, canals, and the crop water use, the urban water use, and the industrial water use. So here there are some examples from recent Australia, like the Australian fires, the fish kills, the droughts, but also at the same time, there are floods being experienced. And there is a very interesting hydrological research, which actually says that many of these floods are caused because of the COVID pandemic. The world has slowed down, our skies are clearer, microclimate is changing. We need to also think about water paradigms and values. There are two kinds of paradigms, eco and ego. In terms of ego water values, humans are considered at top of the food chain, and we have seen that we can win and conquer, and we can link only the rights which are human rights, but we also need to carefully think what are the eco values. So water, in terms of the eco values, humans are part of the broader ecological system. We need to carefully think about aspects like water pollution. How can we carefully look into the urban as well as rural landscapes and the rights of the indigenous and local communities, and also look into river and ecosystems together. So that's where your conference about hydrological cycle and water resources management need to carefully link with integrated water resource management, SDGs, and respect for international environmental law. So we have to move from ego water values to eco water values. There are many interesting works which have looked into water values, environmental values, economic values, social values, cultural values, governance values. Like, for example, from governance values point of view, how can we make decisions about water management and how do we make sure all stakeholders are fully included. Water culture is a new concept, but it's very old in our lives, like the Indus Valley civilization and the water role. And of course, our present day civilization, the Yellow River civilization, the Ganges and Brahmaputra. So in these very important systems, there are values which have been adapted over periods of time. We have been transforming ourselves. Indus Basin Treaty is a very interesting example where, of course, as the water flows change, we needed to adapt with the new infrastructure. So we have to carefully think about how do we manage the different parts of the river system with the hydrological cycle we have, and how do we actually look into water as a resource and water in terms of human and cultural values. UNESCO Office Beijing is promoting World Great Rivers Forum. The next one will be this year, and we will be very happy to link with you and Indus River civilization, how it can contribute to the world in terms of the water values the Great Indus carries from its upper mountains and watersheds all the way to the oceans. So if we think about a philosophical framework, people have been thinking about society, environment, and economy as part of sustainable development. But I think now with the situation, for example, in Pakistan, between different provinces and water has been given as a subject to the provinces, and the environment as a subject for the provinces, we need to carefully consider the politics and the culture as well. And that's where what and how we need to do water management as sustainable development of the water management, but we bring the ecological civilization. There is an example from China. Chinese eco-tradition and link with Confucianism, with Taoism, with Buddhism, and now with the Marxism and linking with the new domestic and global practices, there is a move from egocentric to ecocentric, and that's where there is the birth of ecological civilization, which is now the China's national policy. Eco-civilization in water management is a very important concept in China. Here is a saying from President Xi Jinping: lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets. So ecology is recognized as an asset, as a natural capital. And how do we provide the value of ecology, which is constantly changing? How do we bring the natural capital and economic development together? And that's a very important paradigm. So rivers like Ravi, which is being polluted, our lakes like Manchar, which has been polluted, how do we bring the ecological value to our rivers like Ravi, like Sutlej, parts of Indus, and at the same time we maintain our lakes such as the Manchar Lake. So that's where we need to carefully look into commercial and industrial civilization. I think Pakistan is still going through commercial and industrial civilization. There is a tension between economic development and human ecological sustainability, and ecological civilization, where we enforce the link between ecological protection and economic development. And that's where we need to look into how do we transform our world without changing the current path of global economic growth. So this is an area which I invite you in your future international conferences to bring the link between the ecological part of the hydrological cycle and the water resources management. So what we need to work on, we can perhaps say there are 3 tiers to that. The policy, which is basically the steering wheel of a vehicle of water management. The technology, like the 5G technologies, like the Wi-Fi, the power of telemetry and the power of drones and the power of satellites, which we can use along with education and culture. So Center of Excellence in Water Resources Research as a prime organization with wonderful minds working there, I think we need to bring technology, policy, and education and culture together with a vision for sustainable water resources in Pakistan, linking with the world. Let me introduce to you from China, River Chiefs system. it is introduced by the Chinese Communist Party at the various levels. At the first instance, it was trialed in Wuxi city in 2007 because there was a big cyanobacterial pollution which damaged the local bodies. So this pilot with river chiefs at different parts of the river system. So you can imagine the river chiefs at the different levels of the watershed and different tributaries, sub-tributaries linking to the river, to the canal systems. So they are progressively responsible for their parts of the river, their parts of the irrigation system, their parts of the lakes. And there is a system of sticks and carrots. So if the river chiefs perform better, they get a reward. And if they perform badly, there would be penalties. This system is now in operation in China very strongly with the local governments as well as with different departments and agencies, environmental protection, water affairs, agriculture, land and resources, linking at different levels at the provincial, city, county, township levels. So there are river chiefs. You can be a river chief responsible for your part of the river in your village. So the policy is to coordinate trans-jurisdictional matters, link river chiefs with the different part of the hydrological cycle, and also have the river chiefs which can coordinate the work of lower level river chiefs, clear responsibilities. So basically the big problem in water resources management between surface water, groundwater, irrigation, urban water is that there are too many players. So basically the Chinese saying is, how do we bring the coordination, 9 dragons managing the water? And here we have very importantly, the assessment and accountability from a hydrological as well as from a governance point of view. The quality of water bodies is part of the assessment of corresponding river chiefs. So you can imagine the chief engineers, the below, the XCNs, the SDOs, but also very importantly, the community chiefs. They are also international river chiefs. River chief face lifetime accountability for environmental performance in their jurisdiction. So very interesting concept already applied in China. I give you an example from Lake Hongfeng in the Guizhou province, where I have a major partnership with the local and the provincial government. And this particular lake is a big lake. It is about 28 kilometers west of the Guiyang city. It's a very important city. There's the Eco Forum Guiyang, which happens every year. It has a big area, about 57 square kilometer. It's a deep lake from 10 to 45 meters deep, huge storage of water, more than 600 million meter cube of water, is supplying water to the whole city, which has a population of over 3 million. And it's also responsible for hydropower, flood control, shipping, recreation, and commercial aquaculture. This has been a highly polluted lake. So there has been a lot of research about the hydrological and ecological parts of the lake. There are more than 500 eco-hydrology related papers in this particular lake. So there is a concept of dual regulation of flow and biota to control quality and quantity of water. Ecological biotechnologies using a different type of vegetation. The phytotechnologies, the concepts like environmental flow, water security, water supply. So a lot of research has taken place nationally and internationally. I visited this area and looked into how can we improve it further. On the left, you see an interesting area next to the lake, many buildings, and at the bottom, you see those buildings removed. So as part of ecological civilization concept, polluting residential areas and industry has been removed from this particular lake. Now it's enjoyed by young people as an educational resource. There are strict laws how it can be used. The ecology has been improved. And in the process, we are also establishing very important linkages with the local government, with the Xinjiang municipal government. Here is Mayor Wang, and I'm visiting this particular lake and we're looking into the plans. We are also establishing with the private sector the environmental education centers, like imagine for the Ravi River, if UET together with the city government of Lahore, establishes an environmental education center at Chadra. So something like that we are doing right now in China, and with the key scientists from the environmental geochemistry labs, from the university people, as well as from the Chinese Research Academy of Environmental Sciences. So this area is already reformed within 5 years. It is now established as a UNESCO Global Eco-Hydrology Demonstration Site. And the value of real estate property has gone up. There are new scientific baseline data which is being collected. We are developing education programs and education facilities. For example, we have more than 10 polytechnics just in this one area, and water is a major subject. So with that, I thank you all. And the future of hydrological analysis, hydrological cycle, and the water resources management is in our hands. We need to take an integrated approach. We need to bring the human and as well as ecological values into our analysis, and we need to guide the policy. With that, I thank you for your time and look forward to continuing to collaborate with you. Have a wonderful meeting.